Did you see there was an article on mittens in the Wall Street Journal this morning from
No,
chess.com?
no.
Yeah, apparently it's
What's it about?
I don't know. I didn't realize it was that big of a thing, but it made the front page journal of the front page of the Wall Street Journal this morning.
About mittens.
Mittens, the chess playing cat.
Oh,
Oh,
Mm.
like Toonces, the talking cat.
Yeah.
It's a big deal in the chess community, mittens.
Have you played mittens before, Drew?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Got my yes.
yeah, me too. I mean, it's nothing new for me,
Usually
but
lose in like 3 moves.
yeah. Welcome to episode 68 of Farm to Markets. Today we are talking about if ChatGPT is the next Google, if China's shrinking population is a sign of cracks in the veneer, and we have more lightning round questions at the end. ChatGPT, the viral internet AI chatbot, has brought the world of artificial intelligence closer to more than 1 million people since it was launched. In 2019, Microsoft invested about $1 billion in OpenAI, which is the tiny San Francisco company that designed ChatGPT. And in the years since, it's quietly invested another $2 billion, according to people familiar with the investment who requested, apparently people who are close to these transactions, they put an additional $2 billion into this. So as ChatGPT's potential becomes clear, some begin thinking of what legacy technology companies it could disrupt. So they thinking it, like Microsoft, Google, where's the disruption going to be? So do you think OpenAI, like the company OpenAI that developed ChatGPT, do you think this is the next Google, Alex?
um, I think the answer to that is just maybe. First of all, Google is getting ready to launch its own version of this. I think it's called Sparrow. It's due out this year. Um, so it's not like Google is getting caught flat-footed and completely blindsided by this tech development. The other thing to note is that in tech, oftentimes the first people in a space are not the ultimate winners of that space. Facebook and Twitter, for example, they're fairly late comers to social media, and yet they have come to completely dominate the industry. Google was not an early player in the search engine space. There was, Yahoo, there was Alta Vista, Excite, others. Google displaced all of them years after they all, reached the market. And another good example is like Apple. They brought smartphones to the masses, but they had existed for like a decade before Apple decided to start selling them. So, I mean, ChatGPT could displace Google searches. OpenAI could replace Google. I think it's at least as likely that Google Sparrow gets ingrained in its own search engine, and then it turns into a question of what will consumers do? Will consumers who have Google like ingrained in their web browsing practices and processes switch to a new product? Maybe. Right now, ChatGPT gets all the headlines, but if people can get largely the same thing by using what they already use, will they change again? It's really hard to say. So I'll just stick with maybe.
Anytime a new player enters the marketplace, I think this question is always going to be asked. What's it going to replace? What repercussions is it going to have? I don't think Chat GPT is going to replace Google anytime soon. And I don't think that's because Chat GPT doesn't offer a good user experience or doesn't have the potential to gain a mass following. But I don't think it's going to replace Google, mostly because it's different from Google. More Chat GPT users doesn't necessarily mean less Google users. I see Chat GDP and Google more as complementary goods instead of substitute goods. It's kind of like if I go to the store and I buy a Coke, I'm probably not going to buy a Pepsi. But if I go to the store and buy a Coke, I might buy a bag of chips. So I kind of see Google and ChatGPT as complements in that sense. And I also think they have slightly different intents. Some similarities, but they also have different intents too. I think ChatGPT, its main intent is it wants to create meaning out of textual information, and it wants to generate responses based on the intent or the context of its user. Now, Google, its main intent is just to provide information based on keyword inputs. So I see this as just a valuable tool in the user's toolbox. If I'm doing research or I'm just browsing the web, I'm going to use Google. I'm going to use ChatGPT. I'm going to use YouTube. I'm going to use all those tools, and they're not mutually exclusive.
I kind of agree with Drew. I think there's just another tool in the toolbox. I don't think it's going to replace Google. It might even enhance Google. I think you use the term or the figures. Microsoft invested, a total of $3 billion in this AI technology, artificial intelligence technology. But I believe Google has invested $100 billion in artificial intelligence over the last 3 years. So I think they're already invested, and I don't think they're afraid of it. I think they're getting ahead of the wave because they see this is a popular thing that's going to be coming on the horizon. When I get on Google, there's different source or different forms of information I'm looking for. Sometimes I'm looking for facts, and sometimes I'm looking for opinions. And I think that this Chat GPT is trying to come up with opinions with their own almost human attitude. That you're going to have a conversation with this AI, and some people may find that attractive. I don't know if I'd find it that attractive. I think I'll use Chat GPT if I'm looking for information that has a low risk if it's wrong. And even when I'm on Google, I don't just stop at one source for opinions. I'll usually look at 5 or 6 different opinions before I'm satisfied. So I think there's a future for ChatGPT. I don't think it's going to replace anything. I think it's just going to enhance what's already in the marketplace.
As a company, I think OpenAI is. I think it's pretty. It's a big step forward in the way people are going to use computers, and I think OpenAI has done a very good job of creating like this open architecture that people can kind of get inside and see how it works. And it's not as secretive as I think Google's Sparrow is. But the thing that's kind of different about this is that I don't think OpenAI as a company is going to file an IPO and then go from like $100 a share to like $1,000 a share in the next 5 years. Because most likely what's going to happen is Microsoft would just acquire the company, or somebody else would just buy the company or buy the technology and incorporate it into their own platform. So I don't think, like, as far as like a company goes, you're going to be seeing OpenAI on the New York Stock Exchange anytime soon. And just because it's not necessarily trying to compete with Google. Like you guys said, maybe it's trying to compete with Google, but it's something that Microsoft can use, and they'd probably be willing to pay, handsomely for it, which they've already dumped a ton of money into it. So, yeah, so it's not like, I'm like waiting for the OpenAI IPO or anything like that. But no, it is pretty novel technology, but it does have some limitations. And one of those is inaccuracies, and the other is that you have no idea. I mean, I don't know, maybe if you're a programmer, you can figure this out, but you have no idea like where the information's coming from. It does not cite its sources. I guess you could ask it. I have not asked it to cite its sources on anything I've requested, so maybe I should just start asking.
I guess it's been programmed to sound incredibly credible, even when it's not.
Yeah, if you're going to say it, just be confident, I guess. It's like a parent teaching its child. It's like, if you don't know, just pretend like you do. But I think Drew was telling me this earlier too, is that when you start asking it for, how should I invest, my money, or like I asked it to write a will for me the other day, and it actually, it is like, here's the things you should include in your will. Here's what a will might look like, but you should go talk to an attorney about it. And it's the same thing with investing. It's like, hey, we're not here to give legal advice, investment advice, like tax advice. And so I think, so, and I don't know if I don't know if, even Microsoft is is brave enough to go out on a limb and just be like, yeah, go ahead and trust the tax advice that ChatGPT gave you, because we believe in it that much. I don't know if there's any attorney out there yet that's going to be like, give their rubber stamp on that. So
it might someday. I mean, we have robo advisors. Maybe someday there'll be an attorney GPT or a CPA GPT.
Maybe, yeah. But the robo advisors basically take you and then put you into like one of four boxes, and I feel like it's harder to do that when you're just like asking for more specific investment advice, because it can scroll Investopedia and be like, subtract your age from 100 and be like, you should do this, and then but I don't know if that's what I mean, you can already get that, and it really hasn't changed that much. So all right, let's see, let's move on here. All right, so economists said that China's shrinking population poses a major future challenge for the world's second largest economy after one of the most disappointing growth rates in decades. China's population dropped about 850,000 to 1.412 billion. The shift towards a shrinking population, which came faster than Beijing had projected, marks a watershed moment for China, which is already plagued with other issues, including slowing growth and productivity, high debt levels, and rising social inequality. Do you think China's shrinking population is a sign that the veneer is kind of cracking, or are these just temporary problems?
Well, I'll start this off with a question. It's not a trick question. It's, how long does it take to make a 25-year-old? And the answer is about 26 years. So this is not just a problem for China, but China's got it just about as bad as anybody in the world as far as countries go. This is in large part thanks to their one-child policy, but it's also, like I said, a feature of other major industrial economies around the world. Back in the 70s, pretty much everybody who was a developed country stopped having kids, and their birth rates went below replacement. That's roughly 2.1 children per woman. That's to keep your population at least stable over a long period of time. When you go below that, your population begins to shrink. Well, China's got a problem where they have more 60-year-olds than 50-year-olds, more 50-year-olds than 40-year-olds, more 40-year-olds than 30-year-olds, and so on and so on and so on. They're just now starting to try to change this by eliminating the one-child policy and turning it into a two-child policy. But the problem is going to be with them for decades, because, again, it takes about 25 years to make a 25-year-old. So this is a problem because they're a manufacturing economy, and they don't have enough people to buy the stuff that their laborers currently make. They need exports, and they need them badly. The other big problem is that at the time when their older manufacturing working age population is starting to age into retirement, there aren't enough young people to replace all the workers, because there are so many fewer 30-year-olds than there are 60-year-olds. So this is making Chinese labor more expensive, making them less competitive for global exports. Also, they're having this problem at the exact same time that the United States is increasingly working to get China out of every one of its supply chains as quickly as possible, whether it's like semiconductors or low mid-grade manufacturing. A lot of this stuff is moving out of China and into other East Asian countries or elsewhere around the world. So this is a big problem for China in general. But as I mentioned, they're not the only ones with this problem. You might think, well, why not just export to the EU? That's another big consumer market. Well, because everybody in the EU's got the same problem. You go to France, you go to Germany, you go to Italy, you can even go to places like the UK, Eastern Europe even. All of them are at or below replacement level. They are all increasingly looking for markets to export excess consumer goods that they don't have enough consumers to buy themselves. So everybody's starting to have the same issue where everyone's looking for markets to sell their stuff, and there simply aren't enough kids everywhere, or young people, consumer age people, to buy all this stuff. Again, China's got it the worst, but every country with an inverted demographic pyramid, which is what they call this stuff, they're going to have the same problem. So yeah, again, China's got it maybe the worst, but they're not the only ones.
So is this a temporary problem or a crack in the veneer is the question you asked, Tom. And I think it's kind of both. I think right now there's certainly some cracks showing in the veneer, but it's not to say the veneer can't be repaired. I mean, unless the Chinese immediately go on this huge family growing spree and start having 2, 3, or any more than one kid, this is certainly going to change things on the macro scale, and we'll probably be feeling the effects of it in the U.S. However, people and economies, they can overcome problems and they can learn to adapt to change. I don't think this is the beginning of the end for China, but in this circumstance, it's probably going to take a while. It might even get worse before it gets better. Um, Look, the one child policy was in effect for so long that it's pretty much been ingrained in the Chinese population. So when they changed that policy, couples just maintained the status quo. Nothing changed. Also, in some parts of China, it's important to note that the male to female ratio is over 4-1. So having a new generation of young couples to solve this population problem also poses a challenge. So it can be overcome. There's going to be some growing pains, so to speak. But even if measures were taken today to reverse this imbalance, it's going to take a full generation before it takes effect. Like Alex said, it takes about 25 3/4 years to create a 25-year-old. So it's definitely a big deal. But when it comes to big deals in economics, I kind of like to ask, what would Freakonomics say? Now, it's possible that a shrinking Chinese population might actually have some good. Less population in China could mean cheaper homes. It could mean that there's more foreign investment opportunity there. There might be less competition in the Chinese workplace or less pressure on the Chinese citizens to find work. Maybe we'll see more production shifted back to the US. Maybe it'll have positive environmental outcomes now that there's less consumption and less waste in the world. So yes, the macro landscape's certainly going to change because of this, but I don't think that it's the end of China as we know it.
I think what we're observing is the harbinger for what's in the future for most socialized countries in the world. Is that to what Alex was saying is that we're not seeing anything unique in China with these low birth rates. We're seeing what's happening in Western societies around the world. Some exceptions in the United States where we have pretty open and liberal immigration policy. But we also have people, some segments of the population are actually having lots of babies. But when you start paying people, even if they don't work, or you're essentially making their employment the central social circle of their existence, and you move them away from the family's value gets smaller and smaller and smaller. In Asia, the family has always been extremely important until the last 70 years or so, at which point the state has become much, much, much more important. And what you find is that once people can get fed without relying on their children, they find that, man, this is a lot easier than raising a bunch of kids. And so just because you allow families to have more kids doesn't necessarily mean they're going to. I just came back from 2.5 weeks in Japan. Japan has an even more dire population problem than China does. And the government is doing everything it possibly can to get young people first to get married, and secondly, to have kids. And they're going, why would I? It's extremely expensive to raise kids, and I'm already being overburdened with all these social security taxes. Heck, you're taking larger and larger portions away from my paycheck to pay my mom and dad and grandma and grandpa. Well, that's what's happening around the world. It's a flawed system, and it's unsustainable. And what we're seeing in Japan is kind of where we're going to see ourselves here in the next couple of decades.
Yeah, I guess I'd be curious to see. Like, I don't think it's the end of China, even though I'd like to apologize to everybody because I'm probably going to title the YouTube episode "The End of China?" For some just a nice clickbaity title. So my apologies, but I'm going to do it. But yeah, you're right. Like, I don't know if it's going to be the end of China, but it might not be, the China that we have today in 25 years, because it's just, I don't, sure they can get through it, but 25 years is a long time when you have to financially support a large part of your population, and it's just how are you gonna make it through that 25 years? And I just don't think it's gonna be pretty. Also, like on top of the other problem, I mean, China has a ton of debt on its books, and which I guess is I guess I'm not versed on well versed on geopolitics to know, but if I were China, like I don't know if I'd want to be like waging a war on Taiwan right now, because that could very well be your last war. I mean, if you want to throw all your resources at that, I just feel like that would accelerate the process. So I guess in my mind, it might be kind of a deterrent from China making any like starting a war with Taiwan or something like that. Who knows what they'll do, but you're right. I think China's going to look very different in 25 years unless they figure out a way to do something. They did, they dropped their COVID policies like almost overnight, and it looks like they're trying to kind of maybe backtrack on some of like the last 5 years here, where they've been kind of closing off their economies to the world. And it looks like they might be starting to open that up a little bit again, realizing the issues that they're in. Because China is very much a globalized economy. They need people to buy their stuff, and so they're not going to buy your stuff if you're going to like go wage war with other countries. So yeah, so hopefully it's kind of a deterrent. But you're right. In 25 years, who knows what China's going to look like? But right now, I mean, if you're going to like invest in China or something like that, I mean, it's pretty dicey over there.
I'm almost wondering, and specifically to China, if their low population rate growth is really a non sequitur for their economy, because I think the same article that you gave us stated that unemployment among young men is like 16.3%. Well, if they're having a population problem, why do they have 16% unemployment with the demographic that's supposed to be the most highly employed? So that's a little bit different than Japan's issue with low population growth, where they're using robots in lieu of people. China has lots and lots of people and not enough jobs in the economy to keep everybody, gainfully employed. I think China's biggest problem is that instead of having 1.4 billion decision makers, they have one decision maker, and this particular decision maker made lots of really, really bad ones over the last few years. If they replace the bad one decision maker and decentralize decision making amongst their population, we could see a real turnaround in their economy.
Yeah. I also say the other scary thing is that when China admits that it underreported numbers in its census, that's pretty scary, because China usually doesn't report accurate data anyways. So when they're going to publicly say, hey, we messed this up by almost like 100 million people or something like that, that's a pretty big deal. So, but we'll move on to the lightning round here. All right, so staying on the vein of artificial intelligence is taking the pizza business by storm, I guess. So with a host of startups introducing machines that churn out pizzas faster and cheaper than humans. Do you have any problem with a robot making your pizza?
No. I mean, if you buy frozen pizza at the grocery store, those things are not made by human hands. Those are all basically an assembly line, and you just bake it. I don't think that there's any real issue with the idea that the final step in the process, baking it, is going to fundamentally upend the entire pizza business. And as far as fast food restaurants, I think everybody's known that something along these lines has been coming for a long time. That it was only a matter of time. So no, I don't really have a problem with it. I don't think it's all that surprising that it's maybe coming in the near future.
Same. I don't have a major problem with it. If the pizza tastes the same, it costs the same or cheaper, then I'm all for it. I mean, maybe there's instances where I want to go down to my local pizza shop and see the owner or have the experience with the staff. That's one thing, but having the option of pizza being good pizza, that's fine with me.
I don't care one way or the other, just as long as whoever makes my pizza is actually servicing my tastes. There's 330 million discerning pizza connoisseurs out there. using artificial intelligence to meet all of their needs is going to be a pretty difficult thing to do. That's why you have multiple pizza parlors in a city.
Yeah, you can program your robot differently. I don't have any problem with it. Sounds like they're having trouble finding workers anyways, and if Little Caesars can knock the price of their pizza down from $5 to like $3, sounds good to me. All right. Next topic here is that scientists in France have created a way to divert lightning strikes using a weather-controlling super laser. Researchers with the Polytechnic Institute of Paris guided the strikes from thunder clouds to places where they don't cause any damage. The team says the new technique could save power stations, airports, launch pads, and other buildings from disaster. Do you think scientists can find a way to turn this into a hot IPO? How big do you think this laser-guided lightning system is going to get?
Well, I guess I thought we had this problem under control with lightning rods. I didn't realize it was going to require lasers to solve it. I guess somebody's going to try and, turn it into a business model. How big do I think it'll get? I don't know. I guess I'd have to figure out how much better it is than a lightning rod.
Right. Yeah, I agree with Alex. If it's better than a lightning rod and it has some serious applications and it might save some people some money from damages, maybe insurance companies. I don't know. Sure. Yeah, if it became an IPO, I'd be interested in taking a look at it, but I don't see it becoming one anytime soon.
Even though it's in our DNA to be afraid of lightning, and certainly there is some property damage that comes from lightning strikes, I think the risk is so small. I don't think this is a big money-making venture one way or the other. It's kind of like coming up with technology that prevents people from being pecked to death by ducks. The sheer numbers of victims is so small. I don't think this is a real moneymaker.
Yeah, probably get bought by like Honeywell or something like that. But it is cool. Like, did you see the pictures in the article? It's like a giant. I mean, it's a pretty impressive looking laser. But which raises questions: do you want these lasers like flashing around an airport? Because I thought lasers were bad for airplanes. So I don't know if that. But they'll have to find some way to solve that issue. Maybe, I don't know.
Sounds like a great plot for a Hollywood movie. Along the Jurassic Park line, where the smart scientists gone awry and they basically destroy everything around them.
Yeah, you could weaponize it and just lead the lightning bolts into places you don't want them. Wow, we got 1 minute left here. So are you looking forward to the next debt ceiling showdown?
Always am.
Yeah, it's always going to be good.
Nah, it's like waiting for a hurricane. It's not going to be a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, we've been here before. All right, that's it for episode 68 of Farm to Markets. We'll see you again next week.